The Pleiades, the seven sisters across cultures, a journey through time, myth, and starlight, the ancient gathering of light. On a clear winter evening, when the sky darkens to that deep velvet blue that seems to hold all the mysteries of existence, there is a sight that has drawn human eyes upward for longer than recorded history can remember. Look toward the constellation of Taurus, the celestial bull, and there, glimmering like scattered diamonds on dark cloth, you will find them, the Pleiades, the seven sisters. A small cluster of stars that appears at first glance to be a single hazy patch of light, but which reveals itself, upon careful observation, as something far more remarkable. 6 stars are visible to most observers under good conditions, though some claim to see 7, and others with exceptional vision have reported seeing as many as 11 or even 14 individual points of light within this celestial gathering. The cluster sits approximately 440 light-years from Earth, making it one of our nearest stellar neighbors in the vast ocean of space. This proximity, combined with the cluster's inherent brightness, has made the Pleiades one of the most observed, most celebrated, and most mythologized objects in the night sky throughout human history. The stars of the Pleiades are young by cosmic standards. Born approximately 100 million years ago from the same giant molecular cloud, they are cosmic infants compared to our own Sun, which has existed for 4.5 billion years. To put this in perspective that touches our earthly sense of time, the Pleiades formed long after the age of dinosaurs had ended. The terrible lizards that once walked the Earth had been extinct for millions of years before these stars ignited their nuclear furnaces and began to shine. And yet, to human perception, they appear eternal, unchanging, fixed in the heavens as they have been for as long as our species has walked upright and wondered about the lights above. The cluster itself contains more than 1,000 confirmed stars, though the vast majority are too faint to be seen without telescopic aid. The brightest among them are hot, blue stars of spectral type B, radiating an intense luminosity that makes them stand out in the night sky. These luminous giants dominate our view of the cluster, but they are not the full story. Hidden among them are numerous red stars, far fainter but actually more abundant, as well as brown dwarfs, those strange objects that fall somewhere between planet and star, massive enough to glow with residual heat, but not massive enough to sustain the fusion reactions that power true stars. The Pleiades span approximately 13 light-years of space, with a dense core region measuring about 4.5 light-years across, surrounded by a more diffuse outer region. They move through space together at a velocity of approximately 20 kilometers per second, bound by their mutual gravitational attraction. This bond, however, will not last forever. Astronomers predict that in approximately 250 million years, the cluster will begin to disperse, its stars gradually drifting apart as they continue their individual journeys through the galaxy, their sisterhood dissolved by the inexorable forces of celestial mechanics. Surrounding the brightest stars is a delicate blue reflection nebula, gossamer veils of cosmic dust that catch and scatter the starlight like silk curtains in a gentle breeze. For many years, astronomers believed these nebulae were remnants of the cloud from which the stars had formed, leftover material from their birth. But more recent observations have revealed a more beautiful and ephemeral truth. The Pleiades are currently passing through an unrelated dust cloud in the interstellar medium, and the reflection nebula we see is a temporary phenomenon, a chance encounter between these wandering stars and the thin material scattered between stellar systems. In cosmological time scales, this is a brief moment, a passing dance between light and dust that will end as the cluster continues its journey through space. The name Pleiades likely derives from the ancient Greek word plein, meaning to sail. For this cluster served as one of the most important celestial markers in the ancient Mediterranean world. When the Pleiades rose in the morning sky just before dawn in late spring, it signaled to Greek sailors that the seas had become safe for navigation. When they set in the evening in autumn, it warned that the sailing season was ending and ships should seek harbor before winter storms made the waters treacherous. This practical astronomical observation became so important to Mediterranean cultures that it shaped calendars, influenced agricultural practices, and eventually gave rise to elaborate mythological stories that attempted to explain why these particular stars held such significance. But the Greeks were far from the first or only people to notice and revere these stars. Across continents, separated by vast oceans and thousands of miles, cultures with no contact with one another all noticed this same cluster of stars. They all incorporated it into their cosmologies, their calendars, their myths. And remarkably, many of these geographically and culturally separated peoples came to strikingly similar conclusions about what they were seeing. Again and again, in Greece, in Australia, in the Americas, in Japan, in India, in the Pacific Islands, people looked at the Pleiades and saw 7 sisters, saw women, saw a family. This remarkable convergence has led some researchers to wonder whether the stories of the 7 sisters might be among the oldest surviving narratives in human culture, passed down through oral traditions for tens of thousands of years. The earliest known concrete depiction of the Pleiades comes from Central Europe, discovered on a hilltop in Germany near the town of Nebra. The Nebra sky disk, as it has come to be known, is a bronze disk approximately 30 centimeters in diameter, adorned with gold inlays depicting celestial objects. Created around 1600 years before the Common Era, during the Bronze Age, this remarkable artifact shows a crescent moon, a full moon or sun, and crucially, a cluster of 7 small gold dots arranged in a pattern that unmistakably represents the Pleiades. The disk was buried as part of a ritual hoard alongside bronze swords, axes, and spiral arm rings, suggesting that it held great ceremonial importance to the people who created it. The Nebra disk represents far more than simple artistic representation. Scholars believe it functioned as a complex astronomical instrument, encoding knowledge about the solstices and serving as a portable calendar. The cluster of 7 stars depicted on the disk corresponds to the Pleiades' role in Bronze Age agricultural cycles. In Northern Europe, the disappearance of the Pleiades from the evening sky in March and their reappearance in October marked the boundaries of the farming season. This knowledge was quite literally a matter of life and death, for planting at the wrong time could mean crop failure and starvation. The Nebra disk represents one of the earliest known attempts by humans to preserve astronomical knowledge in a permanent portable form, a Bronze Age computer designed to track the heavens and predict the turning of seasons. The location where the disk was found adds another layer of meaning. The hilltop on Mittelberg, where the disk was buried, served as an observatory and sacred site. From this vantage point, when aligned properly, the disk's gold arcs point toward the Brocken Mountain on the horizon, where the sun sets during the summer solstice. Other landscape features visible from this location mark significant solar events throughout the year. The people who created and used this disk had developed a sophisticated understanding of the relationship between celestial observations and terrestrial geography, binding heaven and earth into a unified system of meaning and practical knowledge. But long before the Nebra disk was crafted in Bronze Age Europe, and long before Greek sailors relied on the Pleiades to time their voyages, these stars had already been observed and named by other cultures. In ancient Mesopotamia, in the fertile lands between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers where human civilization first bloomed, the Babylonians knew the Pleiades as Emuel, meaning literally star of stars or star cluster. The cuneiform symbol used to write this name depicted 6 stars, and Babylonian astronomical texts placed the Pleiades at the very beginning of their star catalogues, a position of prominence that reflected both the cluster's visibility and its importance. In Mesopotamian astronomy, which formed the foundation for much of what would later develop in Greek and subsequently Western astronomical traditions, the Pleiades held a position of special significance. The cluster's position in the sky, close to the ecliptic, the apparent path of the sun through the constellations, meant that the moon and planets would regularly appear to pass near or through the Pleiades. These conjunctions were carefully observed and recorded on clay tablets, interpreted as omens that could foretell events of earthly significance. But beyond their divinatory importance, the Pleiades served crucial practical functions in the Babylonian calendar system. The Babylonians developed one of the most sophisticated calendar systems of the ancient world, a lunisolar calendar that attempted to reconcile the cycles of the moon with the solar year. This was no simple task, as 12 lunar months total only 354 days, falling short of the solar year by 11 days. Left uncorrected, this discrepancy would cause the months to drift through the seasons, making the calendar useless for agricultural planning. The Babylonians solved this problem through careful astronomical observation and the periodic insertion of intercalary months. The Pleiades played a key role in this system. The heliacal rising of the Pleiades, their first appearance in the dawn sky after a period of invisibility, marked important transitions in the Babylonian agricultural calendar. This event signaled when certain crops should be planted, when irrigation channels should be prepared, and when tax collectors should expect grain deliveries from farmers. In this way, the stars above were intimately connected with the practical realities of earthly existence. The temples and palaces of Mesopotamia, which controlled vast agricultural estates, relied on accurate astronomical observation to coordinate the labor of thousands of workers and ensure adequate food supplies for urban populations. Ancient texts from the MUL. A pin, a canonical series of Babylonian astronomical tablets compiled around 1,000 years before the Common Era, contain detailed information about the rising and setting times of the Pleiades throughout the year. These tablets, written in cuneiform script on clay and preserved in the libraries of Assyrian kings, represent the accumulated astronomical knowledge of centuries. They provided a framework that later astronomers and astrologers would build upon, influence spreading eventually to Greece, Egypt, India, and beyond. In ancient India, the Pleiades were known by the Sanskrit name Kritika, which translates as the cutters. The term evokes sharp implements, knives or blades that sever, and this association with cutting extends through multiple layers of Hindu mythology and cosmology. The Kritikas, as the star goddesses were known in plural form, held a position of tremendous importance in Vedic astronomy and Hindu religious practice. They were recognized as one of the 27 nakshatras, lunar mansions that divided the ecliptic into segments used for astrological calculations and timing of religious ceremonies. The mythology surrounding the Kritikas is rich and multi-layered, connecting them to some of Hinduism's most important deities and narratives. According to tradition, 6 of the Kritikas served as foster mothers to Kartikeya, also known as Skanda or Murugan, a major war god in the Hindu pantheon. The story of Kartikeya's birth and upbringing reflects the complex relationships between gods, the natural world, and the starry heavens that characterize Hindu cosmology. Investigation/exposition, the gathering of stories across time and space. To understand the full significance of the Pleiades in human culture, we must journey through time and across continents, collecting stories like precious stones, examining each facet to see how different cultures have perceived these same stars. This exploration reveals not just isolated mythologies, but patterns that repeat, themes that echo, suggesting something profound about the human relationship with the night sky and our need to find meaning in celestial patterns. Let us begin in ancient Greece, where the mythology of the Pleiades achieved perhaps its most detailed and influential form. The Greek storytellers crafted an elaborate narrative around these stars, giving them individual names, detailed biographies, and complex familial relationships that connected them to the broader tapestry of Greek mythology. According to these stories, the Pleiades were 7 divine sisters, daughters of the Titan Atlas and the sea nymph Pleione. Their names were Maia, Alcyone, Taygete, Celaeno, Sterope, Electra, and Merope, and each had her own story, her own destiny. Atlas, their father, occupied one of the most tragic positions in Greek mythology. As punishment for his role in the Titanomachy, the great war between the Titans and the Olympian gods, Zeus condemned Atlas to bear the weight of the heavens upon his shoulders for all eternity. He stood at the western edge of the world, forever holding up the sky, unable to move, unable to rest, unable to protect his daughters from the dangers that would come. The sisters served as companions to Artemis, the virgin goddess of the hunt, the moon, and wild places. In this role, they were meant to remain chaste, devoted to their divine mistress and the pure, untouched wilderness she represented. But the Olympian gods had other intentions. Zeus, the king of the gods, notorious for his amorous pursuits, seduced or forced himself upon several of the sisters. Maia, the eldest and said to be the most beautiful, bore Zeus a son, Hermes, who would become the messenger of the gods, the guide of souls to the underworld, and the patron of travelers, merchants, and thieves. Electra also lay with Zeus, and from their union came Dardanus, who would found the city of Troy and establish the Trojan royal line. This connection would later prove significant, for when Troy fell to the Greeks after the 10-year siege immortalized in Homer's Iliad, some versions of the myth claimed that Electra, grieving for her descendants and their ruined city, separated herself from her sisters. She was said to have become a comet, eternally mourning, or to have moved to the Arctic regions of the sky, her light dimmed by sorrow. Taygete caught the attention of Zeus as well, but she prayed to Artemis for protection. In some versions of the story, Artemis transformed Taygete into a doe to help her escape Zeus's advances, though ultimately the transformation proved temporary and Zeus had his way. Taygete bore him a son, Lacedaemon, who would become the legendary founder of Sparta, that most fierce and martial of Greek city-states. Alcyone and Celaeno also bore children to the gods. Alcyone lay with Poseidon, god of the seas and earthquakes, and bore him several children including Hyrieus. Celaeno likewise coupled with Poseidon and had sons by him. Even Sterope, depending on which version of the myth one follows, married the god Ares or bore children to divine fathers. Only Merope among the seven took a mortal husband, marrying Sisyphus, the legendary king of Corinth, who would later be condemned to roll a boulder up a hill in the underworld for all eternity, only to watch it roll back down each time he neared the top. This choice by Merope to marry a mortal rather than a god was seen as bringing shame upon her, and it provided an explanation for why one star in the Pleiades cluster appears fainter than the others. Merope, it was said, hid her face in embarrassment at her mortal marriage, dimming her light out of shame. This connection between the mythological narrative and observable astronomical reality, the fact that observers could indeed see one fainter star among the cluster, gave the story a compelling element of apparent truth. But the most famous myth concerning the Pleiades involves their encounter with Orion, the great hunter. Orion was a figure of enormous size and strength, a giant among men, and his exploits in hunting were legendary throughout Greece. When he encountered the Pleiades and their mother Pleione, he became infatuated with them. Different versions of the story provide different motivations, some suggesting he was driven by love, others by mere lust, but all agree on what happened next. Orion began to pursue the sisters relentlessly. For 7 years, according to some accounts, Orion chased the Pleiades across the land. Their father Atlas, bearing the burden of the heavens on his shoulders, was powerless to protect them. Artemis, their divine patron, was outraged that her virgin companions were being harassed. She appealed to Zeus for help. The king of the gods, taking pity on the fleeing sisters, transformed them first into doves, hoping this would allow them to escape. But Orion, the greatest hunter in creation, was not deterred by mere birds. He continued his pursuit. Finally, Zeus transformed the sisters into stars, placing them in the heavens where Orion could never reach them. But even this was not the end of the story. In some versions, Orion died after being stung by a scorpion sent by Artemis or by the earth goddess Gaia. Other versions say he was killed by Artemis herself, either accidentally or as punishment for his hubris. But death did not end Orion's pursuit. Zeus placed the hunter among the stars as well, and there in the night sky, one can still see Orion eternally chasing the Pleiades. When the Pleiades rise in the east, Orion rises behind them. When they set in the west, Orion follows. The hunter's quest continues even in death, frozen forever in the wheeling patterns of the night sky. This Greek mythology spread throughout the ancient Mediterranean world and eventually to Rome, where it was adopted and adapted by Latin writers. The Roman poet Ovid included the story of the Pleiades in his Fasti, his poetic treatment of the Roman calendar. Roman farmers and sailors relied on the Pleiades just as the Greeks had, watching for their rising and setting to guide agricultural and maritime activities. The Latin writer Pliny the Elder, in his encyclopedic Natural History, discussed the Pleiades' importance for navigation and farming, noting that their disappearance from the evening sky in May marked the beginning of the dangerous sailing season, while their morning rising signaled its end. Now let us cross vast distances and travel to the opposite side of the Earth, to the ancient continent of Australia, where indigenous peoples had observed and told stories about the Pleiades for millennia before any European set foot on their shores. In Aboriginal Australian cultures, which represent some of the longest continuous cultural traditions in human history, stretching back more than 60,000 years, the Pleiades hold a place of profound importance. The Aboriginal stories of the Pleiades vary significantly between different language groups and regions, as Australia is home to hundreds of distinct indigenous cultures, each with its own traditions, languages, and cosmologies. Yet despite this diversity, certain themes recur across the continent. Again and again, the Pleiades appear as a group of women, usually 7 sisters, and again, they are being pursued by a male figure or figures, resulting in their flight into the sky. Among the Wurundjeri people of Victoria, the Pleiades are known as the Carrotgurk, 7 sisters who alone possessed the secret of fire. Each sister carried a live coal on the end of her digging stick, which they used to cook the yam daisy roots or murnong that they gathered. The Carrotgurk refused to share their precious fire with anyone, keeping this transformative technology to themselves. But Crow, the clever trickster figure common to many Aboriginal narratives, devised a plan to steal their secret. Crow buried snakes in an ant mound and called to the Carrotgurk sisters, telling them he had found a deposit of larvae tastier than the yams they normally ate. The sisters began digging eagerly, but their digging disturbed the snakes Crow had hidden. The angry snakes attacked, and the sisters shrieked and struck at them with their digging sticks with such force that the live coals flew off the ends of the sticks. Crow seized these coals and flew away, and from these stolen embers, fire spread to all the peoples of the land. The Carrotgurk sisters, their work complete whether intentionally or not, were swept up into the sky, where their glowing fire sticks became the Pleiades star cluster. This story, like many Aboriginal narratives, operates on multiple levels simultaneously. On one level, it is an origin story, explaining how fire came to be widespread rather than the monopolized possession of a few. On another level, it is a moral tale about the danger of hoarding resources and the cleverness required to redistribute them. And on yet another level, it functions as a mnemonic device, encoding practical knowledge about firemaking and seasonal changes in an easily remembered narrative form that could be passed down through generations. In Central Australia, among the Pitjantjatjara and other Western Desert peoples, the Pleiades are known as the Kunkarankalpa, 7 sisters who feature in one of the most widespread and important Dreamtime stories. The term Dreamtime, though imperfect, refers to the Aboriginal concept of Tijukurpa, the time of creation when ancestral beings moved across the land, shaping it and establishing the laws and customs that govern existence. In the story of the Kunkarankalpa, the 7 sisters are traveling across the country when they attract the attention of a man variously called Nurunya, Uala, or Watiniru, depending on the region and language group telling the story. This man pursues the sisters relentlessly, driven by desire and using powerful magic to try to capture one of them. The sisters flee across vast distances of desert country, and as they travel, they shape the landscape itself. They create rock holes, sand hills, and rocky outcrops in their desperate attempts to trick or evade their pursuer. The details of the pursuit vary in different versions of the story. In some, the man is of the wrong skin group according to Aboriginal kinship systems, making any marriage between him and the sisters forbidden by law. In other versions, he is simply determined to possess what he cannot rightfully have. The sisters use their knowledge and cunning to stay ahead of him, at times transforming themselves or calling upon the help of other beings. At one point, they create a deep waterhole that passes underground through a hill. They dive into one side and emerge from the other, then ascend into the sky before their pursuer can follow. Even in the sky, the pursuit continues. The man transforms himself into a star and follows them still, usually identified with the constellation Orion, or specifically with the stars of Orion's belt. The morning star, representing the persistent suitor, rises after the seven sisters each night, eternally chasing them across the heavens but never quite catching them. This celestial drama plays out night after night, season after season, a constant reminder of the story and the laws it encodes. The Seven Sisters story in Aboriginal culture is not merely a myth told around campfires. It forms part of a songline, one of the longest in Australia, stretching across thousands of kilometers from the west coast to the central deserts. Songlines are conceptual pathways across the land that link locations, stories, and songs together, serving as both navigational aids and repositories of cultural knowledge. Different groups along the songline know different sections of the story, and when people from different areas meet, they can share their portions of the narrative, piecing together the full journey of the Seven Sisters. These songlines encode tremendous amounts of practical information about water sources, food plants, safe traveling routes, and seasonal patterns, all woven into memorable narratives that can be passed down through oral tradition. The Seven Sisters songline maps out a vast network of knowledge across some of Australia's most challenging terrain, demonstrating the sophisticated methods Aboriginal peoples developed for preserving and transmitting information over countless generations. Recent astronomical research has added a remarkable dimension to these Aboriginal stories. Scientists studying the proper motion of stars in the Pleiades cluster have noted that the star Pleione, one of the seven main stars, is gradually moving closer to its neighbor Atlas. Currently, these two stars appear so close together that to the naked eye, they look like a single star. But if we use astronomical data to rewind time 100,000 years, Pleione and Atlas would have been farther apart, easily distinguishable as separate stars. This means that 100,000 years ago, most people really would have seen seven distinct stars in the Pleiades cluster, not the six that are typically visible today. This discovery has profound implications. Could the Aboriginal stories of seven sisters date back 100,000 years or more, passed down through oral tradition across more than 4,000 generations? Could the myth preserve an accurate observation of the night sky as it appeared to the very earliest members of our species? While we cannot prove this with certainty, it opens up the possibility that some Aboriginal narratives might be among the oldest surviving stories in human culture, oral traditions that have been maintained with remarkable fidelity across unimaginable spans of time. From Australia, let us journey across the Pacific Ocean to the Americas, where numerous indigenous cultures developed their own stories and understandings of the Pleiades. These cultures had no contact with Aboriginal Australians or ancient Greeks, yet their stories echo with similar themes. Once again, we find groups of women or children, pursuit, transformation into stars. Among the Kiowa people of the North American Great Plains, there is a famous story linking the Pleiades to Devil's Tower, that dramatic geological formation rising from the plains of Wyoming. According to Kiowa tradition, 7 young girls were out playing when they were suddenly attacked by giant bears. The terrified girls ran to a low rock and climbed upon it, praying to the Great Spirit for help. The Great Spirit heard their prayers and caused the rock to grow, rising higher and higher into the air, lifting the girls beyond the reach of the bears. The frustrated bears clawed at the sides of the rising rock, leaving deep vertical grooves in its surface, gouges that can still be seen today in the distinctive columns of Devil's Tower. The rock continued to rise until it pushed the 7 girls up into the sky itself, where they became the Pleiades star cluster. The Kiowa maintain that one can still see the claw marks of the pursuing bears on Devil's Tower, and every time they look up at the Pleiades, they remember the story of the 7 sisters and their miraculous escape. This story explains both a dramatic terrestrial feature and a celestial phenomenon, binding earth and sky together in a unified narrative that makes sense of the world. The Lakota people, also of the Great Plains, have a similar tradition linking the Pleiades to Devil's Tower, which they call Mato Tapila, or Bear Lodge. The themes of pursuit, transformation, and the creation of dramatic landscape features recur across multiple Native American cultures, suggesting either very ancient common origins or the tendency of human minds to create similar narrative structures when observing the same celestial and terrestrial features. The Cherokee people of the southeastern woodlands have a particularly beautiful story about the Pleiades. According to Cherokee tradition, there were once 7 young boys who spent all their time playing the gateasti game, a form of ball play, instead of helping with the work that needed to be done. Their mothers, frustrated by the boys' idleness, scolded them and refused to give them food. The boys continued playing, dancing in circles around the ceremonial ball court. As they danced, something strange happened. They began to rise slowly into the air. One of the mothers noticed what was happening and ran to grab her son, trying to pull him back to earth. She caught hold of him and pulled, but she pulled so hard that he fell back to the earth with great force, sinking into the ground. The other 6 boys continued to rise until they became stars in the sky, the Pleiades, which the Cherokee call Anitsatsa, the boys. The mother of the 7th boy grieved for her lost son, visiting the spot where he had fallen each morning and evening, her tears soaking into the earth. After many days, a small green shoot emerged from the ground, growing taller day by day until it became a great pine tree. The Cherokee say that the pine tree and the Pleiades are of the same nature, both holding within themselves the same bright light, connecting earth and sky through this mother's love and grief. This story carries multiple layers of meaning. On the surface, it is a cautionary tale about the importance of fulfilling one's responsibilities to the community. But it also speaks to transformation, the way that grief and love can create beauty, the connections between the terrestrial and celestial realms, and the special nature of pine trees, which remain green through all seasons, holding light even in darkness like stars. Among the Onondaga people, one of the 6 nations of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, a similar story tells of 7 young boys who loved to dance but neglected their duties. One day, as they danced, they began to rise into the air, their heads made light by hunger. A woman saw them rising and called out, bringing others from the camp, all carrying food and calling for the boys to return. But the boys continued to rise. One looked back at the people below and fell from the sky, becoming a shooting star. The other 6 continued upward, becoming the Pleiades. The Onondaga say that every shooting star recalls this story, while the 6 stars continue to dance in the sky, a pretty band of dancing children. In Mexico, among the Aztec civilization, the Pleiades held tremendous religious and calendrical significance. The Aztecs called the cluster Tianquistli, meaning marketplace or gathering place, and they considered it a crucial sign of the continuation of the cosmos. The Aztecs followed a complex calendar system that combined a 260-day ritual calendar with a 365-day solar calendar. These 2 calendars would synchronize every 52 years, an event called the calendar round. The Aztecs believed that at the end of each 52-year cycle, the world was in danger of ending, and the gods had to be convinced to allow the cosmos to continue. The new fire ceremony, one of the most important rituals in Aztec religion, was performed at the completion of each calendar round. On the final night of the 52-year cycle, all fires throughout the Aztec Empire were extinguished, plunging cities and homes into darkness. Priests and people waited anxiously, watching the sky. At midnight, when the Pleiades reached the zenith, passing directly overhead, priests kindled a new fire on the chest of a sacrificial victim. If the stars crossed the zenith successfully, it meant the gods had decided to allow the cosmos to continue for another cycle. The new fire was distributed throughout the empire, and celebrations erupted everywhere as the people rejoiced that the world had been granted another 52 years of existence. This practice demonstrates the profound connection the Aztecs saw between celestial movements and the fundamental stability of existence. The Pleiades were not just interesting astronomical objects, but critical markers in a cosmic drama where the continuation of reality itself hung in the balance. The positioning of sacred architecture, such as the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan, shows alignment with the setting point of the Pleiades at certain times of year, further emphasizing their importance in Mesoamerican cosmology. Similarly, among the Maia civilization, the Pleiades played important roles in agricultural calendars and religious observances. The Maia were among the most accomplished astronomers of the ancient world, rivaling or surpassing their European contemporaries in the accuracy of their measurements of planetary cycles and stellar movements. The heliacal rising of the Pleiades, their first appearance in the dawn sky, marked the beginning of the agricultural year in many Maya regions, signaling when fields should be prepared and seeds planted. Now let us travel west across the Pacific Ocean to Japan, where the Pleiades are known as Subaru, a word that means unite, gather together, or cluster. The concept of unity embodied in this name reflects a cultural value of harmony and cooperation, the idea that individual entities coming together create something greater than the sum of their parts. In Japanese tradition, the stars of the Pleiades are seen as a tight-knit group, a family or community bound by sacred connections. This symbolism proved so powerful that when several Japanese companies merged in the 1950s to form an automobile manufacturer, they chose the name Subaru to represent their unity. The company's logo features 6 stars arranged in the pattern of the Pleiades, representing the 6 companies that merged. This modern corporate usage of ancient astronomical symbolism demonstrates how the Pleiades continue to carry cultural meaning even in contemporary times. In Japanese folklore and traditional astronomy, the Pleiades served practical purposes similar to those in other cultures. Their appearance and disappearance marked seasonal transitions, guiding agricultural work and other time-sensitive activities. Different regions of Japan had varying names and associations for the cluster, but the theme of gathering, unity, and seasonal marking remained consistent. The Pleiades also featured in the Tanabata festival, which celebrates the yearly meeting of 2 star-crossed lovers represented by the stars Vega and Altair, showing how the cluster was woven into the broader tapestry of Japanese astronomical and cultural traditions. Sailing south and west from Japan brings us to Aotearoa, New Zealand, home of the Maori people who know the Pleiades as Matariki. In Maori culture, Matariki holds such significance that in 2022, New Zealand established Matariki as an official public holiday, the first public holiday in the nation's history to recognize Te Ao Maori, the Maori world and worldview. The name Matariki itself is rich with meaning. It has been translated as tiny eyes or little eyes, from Mata meaning eyes and Riki meaning small. However, a deeper interpretation connects the name to the phrase Ngā Mata o Te Ariki Tohiramatia, meaning the eyes of the god Tohiramatia. This name finds its origins in the Maori creation story of the separation of Ranginui, the Sky Father, and Papatua Nuku, the Earth Mother. According to Maori tradition, Ranginui and Papatua Nuku were locked in a tight embrace, their children trapped in darkness between them. The children decided they needed to separate their parents to allow light into the world. Tain, the god of forests, succeeded in pushing them apart, wrenching Ranginui and Papatua Nuku from each other and letting light flood into creation. But Tohiramatia, the god of weather and winds, was furious at this separation. He loved his parents and wanted them to remain together. In his grief and rage, he attacked his siblings, and his tears as he wept for the separation of his parents became the stars of Matariki. The rising of Matariki in the pre-dawn sky occurs in late June or early July, marking the beginning of the Maori New Year. This is midwinter in the southern hemisphere, a time when major work has concluded, food has been gathered and stored, and people can come together for celebration and reflection. Matariki is a time for honoring ancestors, particularly those who have died in the past year. It is a time for celebrating the present and planning for the future. Traditional customs include flying kites, which were thought to touch the sky and connect with the stars, and the sound of the putatara, a traditional shell trumpet, to announce the rising of Matariki. The cluster is actually composed of multiple stars, each with its own name and significance in Maori tradition. Matariki herself is the mother star, connected to well-being, health, and the future year's prospects. Pohutukawa is associated with those who have died. Waiti and Waita are connected to fresh water and food from water. Waipunere Makron Rangi relates to rain. Tupuarangi and Tupuanuku connect to foods from above and below the ground respectively. Ura-Angi is associated with winds. The visibility and brightness of these individual stars were read as omens for the coming year, with clear, bright stars suggesting an abundant year ahead, while hazy or dim stars might warn of difficulties. Returning westward to India, we find the Pleiades known as the Kritika, the third of the 27 nakshatras that divide the lunar zodiac. The Sanskrit name Kritika means the cutters, evoking sharp blades or implements that sever. This asterism is particularly associated with Agni, the god of fire, and with Kartikya, the six-headed war god who was raised by 6 of the Kritika sisters. The story of Kartikya's birth is one of the most complex and fascinating in Hindu mythology. It begins with a demon named Tarakasura who had gained a boon through severe austerities that made him virtually invincible. He could only be killed by a son of Shiva, the great ascetic god who had withdrawn from the world in meditation after the death of his wife Sati. The gods desperately needed Shiva to father a son who could defeat Tarakasura, but Shiva remained lost in his meditations, uninterested in worldly affairs. Eventually, through a series of divine interventions, Shiva was united with Parvati, a reincarnation of Sati. But the seed of Shiva was so powerful, so filled with cosmic energy that no single womb could contain it. The seed was taken by Agni, the fire god, and carried to the Saravana, a forest of reeds. There, the divine energy took form, manifesting as a baby with 6 heads and 12 arms. The 6 Kritika sisters, wives of 7 sages who resided in the stars of Ursa Major, the Big Dipper, came to this forest and found the miraculous child. They each nurtured him, each providing motherly care, and because of this, the child became known as Kartikya, the son of the Kritikas. Kartikya grew rapidly, as befitting a divine warrior, and eventually fulfilled his destined purpose by defeating the demon Tarakasura. He became the god of war, the commander of the divine armies, a deity of tremendous power and importance, particularly in southern India where he is known as Murugan. His 6 heads are said to represent 6 divine attributes: wisdom, detachment, strength, fame, wealth, and divine powers. The Kritikas themselves are honored as embodiments of nurturing power, protective maternal energy, and the fierce capabilities needed to raise and protect a divine warrior. They are sometimes identified with the Sapta Matrikas, the 7 mothers who in other contexts appear as powerful warrior goddesses assisting Durga in her battles against demons. This connection between the Pleiades, nurturing motherhood, and fierce protective power creates a complex understanding of feminine energy in Hindu thought. The Kritika nakshatra is ruled by Agni, the fire god, which connects it to themes of purification, transformation, and illumination. Fire destroys but also purifies. It provides light in darkness. It transforms raw materials into cooked food, cold into warmth, night into illuminated space. These themes of transformation through intensity, of purification through trial, run through the astrological and spiritual associations of the Kritika in Hindu tradition. The Pleiades rising at dawn was used to mark the beginning of particular months in the Hindu calendar. The month of Kartika, which usually falls in October-November, is named after Kartikya and connected to the Kritikas. This is the month when Diwali, the festival of lights, is celebrated. Some scholars have noted that the lamps lit during Diwali may originally have represented the stars of the Kritikas shining in the autumn sky, a row of lights mirroring celestial lights, though the festival has taken on many other meanings and associations over its long history. The convergence of themes across these diverse cultures, separated by vast distances and thousands of years, suggests something profound about the human relationship with these particular stars. The recurrence of feminine groupings, of sisters or mothers, of pursuit and transformation, of seasonal markers and agricultural significance, hints at either very ancient common origins for these stories or independent development of similar narratives in response to similar observations. The myth of 7 women with 1 missing or dimmed appears in Greek tradition, where Merope hides her face, in Aboriginal traditions, where 1 sister is captured or hidden, in various Native American stories, where 1 child falls back to earth, and in Hindu tradition, where 6 Kritikas nurture Kartikya while a 7th remains separate. Could this reflect an ancient observation of the cluster, passed down through oral tradition from a time when 7 stars were clearly visible? Or does it simply reflect the fact that most people, looking at the Pleiades with the naked eye, can see 6 stars clearly, with one more difficult star that flickers in and out of visibility depending on conditions? Climax/revelation. The convergence of earth and sky. We stand now at a threshold of understanding, a place where scientific observation and ancient wisdom converge, where the stories told by our ancestors reveal truths that modern astronomy confirms, and where the boundary between myth and observable reality becomes beautifully blurred. The stars of the Pleiades are real, physical objects, massive spheres of hydrogen and helium undergoing nuclear fusion, generating tremendous heat and light through reactions in their cores. They were born from gravitational collapse of a giant molecular cloud 100 million years ago, igniting when their cores reached temperatures and pressures sufficient to fuse hydrogen into helium. They are moving through space at approximately 20 kilometers per second relative to our solar system, part of a local stream of stars all moving in roughly the same direction through the galaxy. And yet, for all their physical reality, for all that we can measure their masses and temperatures, analyze their spectra and calculate their orbits, the Pleiades are more than just hot balls of gas fusing elements. They are also the 7 daughters of Atlas and Pleione, fleeing Orion's pursuit. They are the Kunkarankalpa, creating waterholes in the desert as they flee an unwanted suitor. They are the Carrotgurk with their fire sticks, or the 7 boys who wouldn't do their chores, or the 6 Criticas nurturing a divine warrior. These stories are not simply primitive attempts to explain natural phenomena before the development of scientific methods. They are sophisticated cultural technologies, encoding practical information, moral lessons, navigational knowledge, and philosophical insights in forms that can be remembered and transmitted across generations without writing. They bind communities together through shared narratives. They connect human experience on Earth to the vast cosmos above. They make the universe comprehensible, meaningful, personal. When an Aboriginal elder teaches a young person the 7 Sisters songline, they are transmitting far more than an entertaining story. They are teaching navigation routes, water sources, food plants, seasonal indicators, kinship obligations, and cultural laws. They are passing down thousands of years of accumulated survival knowledge in a format that engages memory, emotion, and imagination, making that knowledge stick far more effectively than bare facts could. When Aztec priests calculated the position of the Pleiades at midnight to determine whether the cosmos would continue, they were engaging in a profound act of cultural renewal. The ceremony required the entire empire to extinguish their fires, to sit in darkness, to wait in uncertainty. When the new fire was kindled and the world proved to continue, the collective relief and celebration reinforced social bonds, renewed commitment to shared values, and gave people a sense of participating in the grand drama of existence itself. When Greek sailors watched for the heliacal rising of the Pleiades to time their voyages, they were using practical astronomical observation, but they were also connecting themselves to an ancient story, seeing themselves as part of a narrative that stretched back through generations. They sailed beneath the same stars that Jason and Odysseus had sailed beneath, part of an unbroken chain of mariners all guided by the 7 sisters. The astronomical reality and the mythological meaning are not in conflict. They are 2 ways of understanding the same phenomenon, each valid within its own framework, each offering insights the other cannot provide. Science tells us what the Pleiades are made of, how far away they are, how they move through space. Mythology tells us what they mean, why they matter, how they connect to human experience and values. Recent research has revealed something remarkable about the motion of stars within the Pleiades cluster. As mentioned earlier, the star Pleione is gradually moving closer to Atlas. 100,000 years ago, these stars would have been distinctly separate to the naked eye. This means that the lost Pleiad theme in so many global myths, the idea that there should be 7 visible stars but most people can only see 6, might preserve an actual astronomical observation from the deep past, from a time when human ancestors could see 7 clear stars in the cluster. If this is true, It suggests that the Seven Sisters story might be the oldest surviving narrative in human culture, passed down through oral tradition for 100,000 years or more. Think about what that means. 4,000 generations of humans telling their children the story, the children telling their children, an unbroken chain of storytelling stretching back to a time before modern humans had migrated out of Africa, before the last ice age, before the invention of agriculture. Before written language, before civilization as we know it existed, the Aboriginal peoples of Australia have been on that continent for at least 60,000 years, and possibly longer. During all that time, they maintained oral traditions, songlines, stories that encode information about the land, the sky, the seasons, the laws that govern existence. The fact that Aboriginal stories of seven sisters being pursued by a male figure echo so closely with Greek stories, with Native American stories, with stories from cultures that had no contact with each other for tens of thousands of years, suggests either remarkable cultural convergence or incredibly ancient common origins. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps humans, looking at the night sky, naturally organize these stars into groups, naturally see patterns of pursuit and flight in the relationship between the Pleiades and Orion, naturally count to 7 and wonder where the 7th star has gone. And perhaps some of these stories do indeed stretch back to our common ancestors, carried by migrating populations as they spread across the globe, evolving and changing but retaining certain core elements through unimaginable spans of time. The Nebra sky disk, created 3,600 years ago, shows that Bronze Age Europeans already considered the Pleiades important enough to depict in gold on a precious artifact. The Babylonian tablets from 1,000 years before the Common Era place the Pleiades at the head of their star catalogues. The ancient Chinese references to the Pleiades date back nearly 4,000 years. In the Rig Veda, among the oldest religious texts in continuous use, dating back perhaps 3,000 years, the Kritikas are mentioned. The Pleiades have been observed, named, and incorporated into human cultural systems for as long as we have records, and the oral traditions suggest they were important for far longer still. What is it about these particular stars that has made them so universally significant? Part of the answer is certainly practical. The Pleiades rise and set in patterns that correlate with seasonal changes across much of the world. In the northern hemisphere, their appearance in the evening sky signaled the approach of winter, while their dawn rising announced spring. For agricultural societies, these seasonal markers were crucial. Planting at the right time could mean the difference between abundance and famine. The Pleiades provided a reliable celestial calendar, visible without instruments, recognizable even to those with no astronomical training. But there is something more, something beyond pure utility. The Pleiades are beautiful. They appear as a small cluster of gems, distinct from the regular patterns of constellations, drawing the eye with their subtle blue light. They are close enough together to seem like a family, a group, yet spread apart enough that one can distinguish individuals within the cluster. This quality of being both unified and diverse, both a single entity and a collection of individuals, resonates with human social structures. We are simultaneously individuals and members of families, communities, cultures. The Pleiades mirror this dual nature. They are also just at the edge of naked eye visibility in terms of distinguishing individual stars. Most people can see 6 clearly, some can see 7 or more with good eyesight and dark skies. This variability creates mystery and wonder. Everyone sees something slightly different, making personal observation and comparison a topic of interest. In ancient times, being able to distinguish the individual stars of the Pleiades was considered a mark of keen vision, almost a superpower. Michael Meislin, the mentor of Johannes Kepler, mapped 11 stars in the Pleiades before the invention of the telescope, demonstrating exceptional visual acuity. When Galileo Galilei first turned his telescope toward the Pleiades in 1610, he was amazed to discover that the cluster contained dozens of stars invisible to the naked eye. His drawings show at least 36 stars, revealing that the hazy patch of light visible to unaided human eyes concealed a vast population of stellar siblings. This discovery demonstrated the power of the telescope to reveal hidden worlds, and it changed forever how humans understood the universe. If so many stars could be hidden in one small cluster, how much more must be out there, invisible to us, waiting to be discovered? Modern astronomical observations have revealed even more about the Pleiades. We now know that the cluster contains over 1,000 stars, including many brown dwarfs, objects too small to sustain fusion, but large enough to glow with infrared radiation. We can measure the individual masses of these stars, their temperatures, their luminosities. We can see that they are all moving together through space, bound by their mutual gravitational attraction. We can calculate how long they have existed and predict when they will disperse. We know that the blue reflection nebula surrounding the brightest stars is created when starlight scatters off tiny dust grains, mostly carbon and silicate particles measuring less than a micrometer across. These grains are so small that they preferentially scatter blue light, giving the nebula its characteristic color, the same physical process that makes Earth's sky blue. We know that this dust cloud is not related to the star's formation, but is simply a region of the interstellar medium that the Pleiades happen to be passing through currently, a chance encounter that will last perhaps another 40,000 years before the cluster moves on. We can see that the Pleiades are dominated by hot, blue B-type stars, but that fainter red stars are actually more numerous. The color of a star depends on its surface temperature, with blue stars being the hottest and red stars the coolest. The brightest star in the Pleiades, Alcyone, has a surface temperature of about 13,000 Kelvin, more than twice as hot as our Sun, which has a surface temperature of about 5,700 Kelvin. These young stars are still in their prime, burning hydrogen in their cores, stable on what astronomers call the main sequence. They will continue burning steadily for hundreds of millions of years before they begin to run out of hydrogen fuel and start their transformation into red giants. Eventually, billions of years from now, they will shed their outer layers and become white dwarfs, dense remnants slowly cooling over trillions of years. But long before that happens, the cluster itself will have dispersed. The gravitational forces holding the Pleiades together are relatively weak, and interactions with giant molecular clouds and other massive objects in the galaxy will gradually pull individual stars away from the cluster. In approximately 250 million years, the Pleiades as we know them will no longer exist as a coherent cluster. The stars will have gone their separate ways, scattering across the galaxy, each continuing its individual journey through space and time. This knowledge of the Pleiades' eventual dissolution adds a poignancy to their current existence. They are a temporary gathering, siblings who have traveled together for 100 million years, but who will eventually part ways. In cosmic terms, their association is brief, a momentary clustering in the vast timescales of stellar evolution. And yet, from a human perspective, they have been and will continue to be a fixed feature of our sky for all of human history and for millions of years into the future. By the time the cluster begins to noticeably disperse, humanity will either have transcended into something we cannot currently imagine or will have vanished entirely, our entire species' existence merely a brief flash in the cosmic story. This tension between human timescales and cosmic timescales is part of what makes astronomy so profound and humbling. The Pleiades were old when humans evolved. They will still be there, at least in some form, long after our species is gone. And yet, for the entire duration of human existence, they have been there in our sky, constant companions to every generation that has ever lived. Every human who has ever looked up on a clear night has had the potential to see these same stars, to wonder about them, to tell stories about them. The Babylonian scribes who wrote star catalogues on clay tablets 4,000 years ago saw the same Pleiades we see. The Aboriginal elders who taught songlines 60,000 years ago saw the same Pleiades we see. Our descendants, if we have descendants, 10,000 years from now will see the same Pleiades we see. This continuity across vast spans of time connects us to our ancestors and our descendants in a way few other experiences can match. Conclusion: stars as memory, stories as navigation. As we let the stories of the Pleiades settle into our consciousness like starlight settling into darkness, we begin to understand something fundamental about the relationship between humanity and the cosmos. We are not separate from the universe, not mere observers of a reality external to ourselves. We are part of the universe, made of the same atoms, governed by the same laws, participants in the same cosmic story. The carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and other elements that make up our bodies were forged in the cores of stars that lived and died billions of years ago. When massive stars reached the end of their lives and exploded as supernova, they scattered these elements across space. These atoms drifted through the galaxy, eventually becoming part of the giant molecular cloud from which our Sun and its planets formed 4.5 billion years ago. We are literally made of stardust, ancient atoms that have been part of countless different forms over billions of years, now temporarily assembled into the patterns we call human bodies. In this sense, we are the universe's way of knowing itself, consciousness arising from matter, matter becoming aware of its own existence. When we look up at the Pleiades, we are matter observing matter, stardust contemplating stars. This perspective, far from diminishing human significance, elevates it. We are the universe's means of self-reflection, the way the cosmos examines itself and seeks to understand its own nature. The stories our ancestors told about the Pleiades were not just entertainment or primitive science. They were ways of building relationship with the cosmos, of making the vast and incomprehensible feel intimate and meaningful. When you know the stars as the Seven Sisters, when you understand them as part of a story that connects to your own life and community, they become more than distant fires. They become family, companions, guides. Modern astronomy has given us new stories about the stars, stories of nuclear fusion and stellar evolution, of gravitational dynamics and spectroscopic analysis. These stories are true and valuable, offering insights our ancestors could never have achieved. But they do not replace the old stories, they complement them. The scientific understanding tells us what the Pleiades are. The mythological understanding tells us what they mean. Both are necessary for a complete human relationship with the cosmos. In our contemporary world, many people have lost their connection to the night sky. Light pollution obscures the stars from view in most urban areas. Artificial lights, while enormously useful, have cost us something precious. The nightly experience of the cosmos, the regular reminder of our place in a vast and ancient universe. Most humans now spend their lives never seeing the Milky Way, never experiencing the profound sense of wonder and smallness that comes from truly seeing the night sky in all its glory. But the Pleiades are bright enough to be visible, even from moderately light-polluted areas. If you go outside on a clear winter evening in the northern hemisphere, or a clear summer evening in the southern hemisphere, and look toward the constellation Taurus, you can still see them. They are still there, still shining, still marking the seasons, still telling their stories to anyone willing to look up and listen. When you see them, remember that you are looking at light that left those stars 440 years ago. The photons that strike your eyes began their journey in the early 17th century, during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I in England, when the Pilgrims were preparing to sail to America, when Shakespeare was writing his final plays. Those photons have been traveling through space at the speed of light for all that time, crossing the vast gulf between their origin and our planet, only to be captured by your eye at this particular moment, in this particular place. Remember that you are seeing the same stars that every human who has ever lived has had the potential to see. The ancient Babylonian astronomers who mapped the heavens from their ziggurates saw these stars. The Greek philosophers who pondered the nature of the cosmos saw these stars. The Aboriginal elders who walked the songlines across Australia for 60,000 years saw these stars. The Maia astronomer priests calculating their intricate calendars saw these stars. The Aztec celebrants waiting in darkness for the new fire ceremony saw these stars. Every sailor who ever navigated by the stars, every farmer who ever planted by celestial signs, every poet who ever wrote about the night sky, every child who ever wondered what those lights in the darkness might be, all of them saw the Pleiades, just as you see them now. The continuity is profound. In a world where so much changes, where civilizations rise and fall, where languages are born and die, where technologies emerge and become obsolete, Where forests become deserts and seas become mountains, the stars remain. Not truly unchanging, for on cosmic timescales they are born and evolve and die just as we do, but unchanging on human timescales, providing a fixed reference point against which we can measure our own transformation. The stories we tell about the stars serve as navigation tools, not just in the literal sense of finding one's way across land or sea, though they certainly served that purpose. They navigate us through time, connecting us to our ancestors and our descendants. They navigate us through meaning, helping us understand our place in the cosmos and our relationships with each other. They navigate us through knowledge, encoding practical information in memorable forms that can survive the loss of written records and the collapse of civilizations. The Aboriginal songlines are perhaps the most sophisticated example of this navigational storytelling. A songline is not just a story and not just a map, but a fusion of the two, a narrative that encodes topographical information, water sources, food availability, safe paths through dangerous territory, kinship relationships and cultural laws, all woven together into a memorable song story that can be passed down through generations. The Seven Sisters songline stretches across thousands of kilometers of some of the most challenging terrain on Earth, mapping routes that have remained viable for tens of thousands of years. When an elder teaches a young person this songline, they are transmitting survival knowledge that has been tested and refined over countless generations. The story format makes the information memorable and engaging. The emotional content creates strong memory anchors. The ritual and ceremonial context gives the knowledge sacred weight, ensuring it will be respected and preserved. The participatory nature of the telling, with different groups knowing different sections, creates a distributed knowledge network where no single disaster can destroy the complete understanding. This is cultural technology of astonishing sophistication, and it predates written language, agriculture, and permanent settlement by tens of thousands of years. It suggests that our ancient ancestors were far more cognitively sophisticated than we sometimes give them credit for. They created systems for preserving and transmitting complex information that were in some ways superior to written records, for oral traditions can survive the loss of physical artifacts, can adapt to changing conditions while maintaining core truths, and create strong social bonds through the shared practice of storytelling. The Nebra sky disk represents a different approach to preserving astronomical knowledge, one that bridges oral tradition and physical record keeping. Created in the Bronze Age, this beautiful artifact encodes knowledge about the solstices, the Pleiades, and the agricultural calendar in a portable form that can be consulted when needed. Unlike a written text, it does not require literacy to use. Unlike pure oral tradition, it provides a fixed external reference that does not depend on human memory. It represents an intermediate stage in the evolution of human knowledge preservation systems. The creation of the Nebra disk required sophisticated metallurgical knowledge to produce the bronze, mining expertise to obtain copper and tin and gold, artistic skill to design and create the inlays, and astronomical knowledge to encode meaningful information. The society that produced this artifact was complex, hierarchical, and capable of sustained multi-generational projects. The fact that they chose to depict the Pleiades so prominently on this precious object demonstrates how important these stars were to their culture and survival. When we look at the Nebra disk today, preserved in a museum, we are seeing a message sent across 3,600 years from people long dead to us, their distant descendants. They wanted us to know that they watched the stars, that they understood the patterns, that they recognized the importance of the Pleiades. They wanted to preserve this knowledge for their children and their children's children in an unbroken chain that now includes us. We have received their message. We remember them through their artifact, and through our remembering, they achieve a kind of immortality. This is one of the gifts that astronomy and mythology together provide: connection across time. The stars form a common reference point for all human cultures, regardless of when or where they existed. Because the stars change so slowly on human timescales, we can look at ancient descriptions of constellations and see essentially the same patterns in our own sky. When we read that the Babylonians called the Pleiades Mul, that the Greeks called them the Seven Sisters, that the Maori called them Matariki, we are not reading about something abstract and distant. We are reading about the same stars we can step outside and see tonight, weather permitting. This creates a bridge between past and present, between their experience and ours. The emotional response we have to seeing the stars on a dark, clear night, that sense of awe and wonder and smallness and connection, that is the same response humans have had for as long as our species has existed. We are experiencing what our ancestors experienced, seeing what they saw, feeling what they felt. This shared experience across time binds us together as a species, reminds us of our common humanity despite all our differences. The stories themselves evolve and change as they pass from generation to generation, from culture to culture. The Greek version of the Seven Sisters is different from the Aboriginal version, which is different from the Kiowa version, which is different from the Hindu version. Each culture has taken the raw material of these visible stars and shaped it according to their own values, concerns, and understanding of the world. The Greeks, with their complex pantheon and dynastic myths, created an elaborate story of divine pursuit and transformation. The Aboriginal peoples, with their focus on land, kinship, and law, created stories that encode practical survival knowledge and social rules. The Kiowa, living on the Great Plains, connected the stars to dramatic local landscape features. The Aztecs, with their concerns about cosmic stability and the need to maintain the universe through ritual, made the Pleiades a key element in their most important ceremonies. These different interpretations do not contradict each other. They are different facets of the same jewel, each revealing something true about the relationship between humans and stars. The scientific understanding of the Pleiades as a cluster of young, hot stars born from a molecular cloud 100 million years ago and slowly dispersing through gravitational interactions is one facet. The mythological understanding of the Pleiades as seven sisters, as divine mothers, as boys who dance too much, as women fleeing pursuit, these are other facets. Each provides a different kind of truth, each valuable in its own context. In our modern age, we have access to more information about the universe than any previous generation. We can see images of distant galaxies taken by space telescopes. We can measure the cosmic microwave background radiation left over from the Big Bang. We can detect gravitational waves from colliding black holes billions of light years away. We can analyze the chemical composition of stars by examining their light through spectroscopes. We know the universe is approximately 13.8 billion years old, that it contains hundreds of billions of galaxies, that it is expanding and that expansion is accelerating. This knowledge is magnificent and awe-inspiring, but it can also be overwhelming and alienating. The universe revealed by modern science is almost incomprehensibly vast, cold, and indifferent. The distances are so enormous, the timescales so extended, the scales so far beyond human experience that it can be difficult to feel any meaningful connection to it. We can become lost in the immensity, feeling small not in a humbling way but in a diminishing way, as if human life and experience are meaningless in the face of such cosmic vastness. This is where the old stories, the myths and legends passed down through generations, serve a crucial function. They provide a human scale to the cosmos. They create relationships between us and the stars. They give meaning and personality to what might otherwise be merely impersonal physical objects. When you know the stars as the seven sisters, when you know their story, when you see them as characters in a narrative rather than just distant spheres of fusing hydrogen, they become personal. They become important not just as objects of scientific study, but as companions, as guides, as family. The stories also encode wisdom about how to live, how to relate to others, how to understand one's place in the larger scheme of things. The Cherokee story of the boys who neglected their duties and rose into the sky teaches the importance of fulfilling one's responsibilities to the community. The Greek story of the sisters fleeing Orion speaks to themes of consent, pursuit, transformation, and the eternal nature of some conflicts. The Aboriginal Seven Sisters stories encode laws about kinship and marriage, practical knowledge about the land, and the consequences of violating social rules. The Hindu story of the Kritikas nurturing Kartikeya speaks to the power of motherhood, the importance of multiple perspectives and nurturers in raising children, and the transformation of divine energy into embodied form. These are not primitive or childish stories. They are sophisticated philosophical and moral teachings encoded in memorable narrative form. The fact that they are attached to visible celestial objects that return night after night, season after season, year after year, reinforces the lessons. Every time you see the Pleiades, you are reminded of the story, and through the story, of the lesson it contains. The stars become a kind of external memory, a cultural hard drive that exists outside any individual human mind but can be accessed by anyone who knows how to read it. This is why the loss of dark skies due to light pollution is so significant. It is not just that we miss out on pretty views, though we do. It is that we lose access to this vast library of cultural knowledge and meaning that has been encoded in the stars for thousands of years. When children grow up never seeing the Milky Way, never learning the constellations, never hearing the stories associated with different stars and clusters, they lose a connection to their cultural heritage, to their ancestors, and to a way of relating to the cosmos that has been part of human experience since before we were fully human. There are efforts to preserve and restore access to dark skies. International dark sky reserves protect areas from light pollution, creating places where people can still see the stars as our ancestors saw them. Astronomy clubs and planetariums work to educate people about the night sky and its significance. Indigenous communities work to preserve and pass down their traditional astronomical knowledge to younger generations. These efforts are valuable not just for scientific education, but for cultural preservation and spiritual connection. The Pleiades, being bright enough to be visible even from moderately light-polluted areas, serve as an accessible entry point to this celestial library. They are often the first deep sky object people learn to identify, and they can lead to exploration of other stars and constellations. Once you know where to find the Pleiades, you can use them to locate nearby Taurus with its bright red star Aldebaran, and the constellation of Orion with its distinctive belt and bright stars Betelgeuse and Rigel. From Orion, you can find Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. From there, the whole celestial sphere opens up, a vast map of stories and knowledge waiting to be explored. In recent years, scientific research has continued to reveal new wonders about the Pleiades. Advanced telescopes and space-based observatories have discovered planets orbiting some of the cluster's stars, though these planets are unlikely to be habitable given the youth and brightness of their parent stars. We have identified numerous brown dwarfs within the cluster, those strange objects that blur the line between planet and star. We have mapped the motions of individual stars within the cluster with great precision, allowing us to predict their future trajectories and understand their past movements. One particularly interesting discovery involves the rotation rates of stars in the Pleiades. By observing how quickly different stars spin, astronomers can learn about their formation processes and evolution. Some stars in the cluster rotate very rapidly, completing a rotation in just a few hours, while others rotate more slowly. These differences provide clues about how angular momentum is distributed during star formation and how it changes over time due to magnetic fields and stellar winds. The presence of lithium in the atmospheres of Pleiades stars has also provided important information. Lithium is a light element that is easily destroyed in stellar interiors when temperatures exceed about 2.5 million Kelvin. In low-mass stars like red dwarfs, lithium can be preserved in the outer layers for hundreds of millions of years, but in larger stars, it is quickly mixed into the hotter interior and destroyed. By measuring lithium abundance in Pleiades stars, astronomers can test models of stellar structure and evolution and determine the cluster's age with greater precision. The Pleiades have also played an important role in the development of our understanding of stellar evolution. Because all the stars in the cluster formed at approximately the same time from the same material, they provide a natural laboratory for studying how stars of different masses evolve. By comparing stars of different masses and temperatures within the cluster, astronomers can test theoretical models of stellar structure and evolution against real observations. One particularly important use of the Pleiades in modern astronomy involves the cosmic distance scale. The distance to the Pleiades serves as a crucial calibration point for determining distances to more remote objects. By measuring the cluster's distance accurately, astronomers can calibrate the relationships between stellar brightness, temperature, and luminosity that are used to estimate distances to much farther stars and galaxies. For many years, there was significant controversy about the exact distance to the Pleiades, with different measurement methods giving slightly different results. This discrepancy, though small in absolute terms, had implications for the entire cosmic distance scale and estimates of the universe's size and age. The European Space Agency's Gaia spacecraft has helped resolve this controversy by measuring the positions and motions of billions of stars with unprecedented precision, including detailed measurements of individual Pleiades members. These measurements have refined our understanding of the cluster's distance to about 444 light-years, with a precision of better than 1%. This accurate measurement serves as a foundation for determining distances throughout the universe, showing how even ancient, well-known objects continue to play crucial roles in modern scientific research. The Pleiades have also been important in the search for planets beyond our solar system. Some of the first attempts to detect exoplanets involved looking for slight wobbles in stellar positions that might be caused by orbiting planets. While these early searches did not succeed in finding planets around Pleiades stars, they helped develop the techniques that eventually led to the discovery of thousands of exoplanets around other stars. The cluster continues to be observed by planet-hunting missions, though the young age and high activity level of the stars make planet detection challenging. Looking toward the future, the Pleiades will continue to be important targets for astronomical research. The upcoming generation of extremely large telescopes, with mirrors measuring 30 meters or more in diameter, will be able to study individual stars within the cluster in extraordinary detail, potentially imaging the surfaces of the largest stars and detecting planets or brown dwarfs too faint for current instruments to see. Space-based infrared telescopes will be able to study the dusty disks around some Pleiades stars, looking for signs of planet formation or remnant debris from asteroid collisions. But beyond their scientific importance, the Pleiades will continue to serve their ancient function, marking the seasons, inspiring stories, connecting humans to the cosmos. They will continue to rise in the evening sky each autumn, signaling the approach of winter in the northern hemisphere and summer in the southern. They will continue to set in spring, marking the changing of seasons. They will continue to be among the first celestial objects that children learn to identify, often with help from parents or grandparents, who themselves learned from their parents or grandparents, continuing an unbroken chain of knowledge transmission that stretches back into the depths of time. In Maori culture, the recent establishment of Matariki as an official public holiday represents a significant step in preserving and celebrating indigenous astronomical knowledge. The recognition that the rising of the Pleiades marks the beginning of a new year, that it is a time for remembering ancestors, celebrating the present, and planning for the future, brings ancient wisdom into modern practice. The holiday encourages people to look up, to notice the stars, to learn their names and stories, to feel connected to something larger than themselves. This integration of traditional knowledge with contemporary life demonstrates that the old stories are not relics of a superseded past but living traditions that continue to have relevance and meaning. When a child in New Zealand learns about Matariki, learns the names of the individual stars and their meanings, learns the story of Tohiramatia weeping for his separated parents, they are receiving a gift that connects them to thousands of years of ancestors. They are learning to see the sky not as a random scattering of lights, but as a meaningful text that can be read and interpreted. Other cultures are also working to preserve and revitalize their astronomical traditions. Native American communities share stories of the Pleiades with younger generations, teaching both the traditional narratives and the practical knowledge those stories encode. Aboriginal Australian communities work to preserve songlines and star knowledge, recognizing that these traditions represent tens of thousands of years of accumulated wisdom about living in harmony with the land and sky. In India, despite rapid modernization and urbanization, the ancient nakshatra system remains in use for determining auspicious times for weddings, ceremonies, and religious observances. The Kritikas continue to be recognized as a powerful asterism associated with Kartikya and Agni, with spiritual and astrological significance. During Kartika month, when the Pleiades are prominent in the evening sky, special prayers and rituals are performed at temples throughout the country, connecting contemporary practice with ancient tradition. Even in Western cultures that have largely lost their traditional star lore, there are efforts to reconnect with the night sky. Amateur astronomy clubs welcome newcomers and teach them to find constellations and deep sky objects. Apps and planetarium software make it easy to identify stars and learn their names and stories. Books, podcasts, and online resources share both the scientific understanding and the mythological traditions associated with different celestial objects. There is a growing recognition that something valuable has been lost as artificial light has washed out the stars, and a desire to reclaim that connection. The Pleiades serve as an ideal focus for these reconnection efforts. They are easy to find, beautiful to observe, rich in scientific interest, and laden with mythological significance. A person just beginning to explore the night sky can start with the Pleiades and use them as a gateway to deeper astronomical knowledge and engagement. A family can go outside together on a clear evening, find the cluster, and share stories about who those stars are and what they mean. This simple act, repeated across generations, maintains the ancient practice of using the stars to connect with family, with culture, and with the cosmos itself. As we approach the end of our journey through the stories and science of the Pleiades, let us return to where we began, with a simple observation of beauty. On a clear night, when you look up and see that small cluster of stars glimmering in the darkness, you are experiencing something profound. You are seeing light that traveled across 440 light-years of space to reach your eyes. You are seeing stars born 100 million years ago, young by cosmic standards but ancient by any human measure. You are seeing siblings, a family of stars bound together by gravity and common origin, slowly dancing through space on their long journey around the galactic center. You are also seeing what humans have always seen, that same pattern of lights that drew the eyes of your ancestors, that inspired them to create stories, to mark calendars, to navigate by, to wonder about. You are participating in an experience that connects you to the deep past and the far future, to people who lived thousands of years before you and people who will live thousands of years after you, all seeing the same stars, all finding meaning in their light. The physical journey of those photons, traveling from the nuclear furnaces in the hearts of distant stars across the vast emptiness of space to strike the retina of your eye, where they trigger chemical reactions that send electrical signals to your brain, which interprets them as vision, as beauty. As wonder, this journey is a miracle of physics and biology, but the emotional and spiritual journey is just as miraculous. The light enters not just your eye but your imagination, your memory, your sense of identity and connection. It becomes part of your story, part of how you understand yourself and your place in the universe. When you share the experience with others, when you point out the Pleiades to a child or a friend and tell them what you know about these stars, you become part of the ancient tradition of storytelling and knowledge transmission that has kept the star stories alive through countless generations. You become a link in the chain, receiving knowledge from the past and passing it forward to the future. In this act of sharing, you participate in something larger than yourself, something that connects all of humanity across time and space. The Pleiades remind us that we are part of something vast and ancient and magnificent. We are temporary inhabitants of a small planet circling an ordinary star in a galaxy containing hundreds of billions of stars, in a universe containing hundreds of billions of galaxies. On one level, this is humbling, even overwhelming. What can human life possibly mean in the face of such immensity? But on another level, it is empowering and awe-inspiring. We are the universe's way of knowing itself. We are matter that has become conscious, that can observe and understand and create meaning. We are stardust contemplating stars. The carbon in our bodies was forged in dying stars billions of years ago. The iron in our blood was created in supernova explosions. We are literally made of the same material as the stars we observe, and through our observations and our stories, we create connections and meanings that would not otherwise exist. The Pleiades, those 7 sisters scattered across the sky, represent both physical reality and human meaning-making. They are hot spheres of fusing hydrogen following the laws of physics and gravity. They are also divine sisters, or dancing boys, or fleeing women, or nurturing mothers, depending on which cultural lens we look through. Both understandings are valid. Both tell us something true. The scientific understanding tells us about the universe's physical workings. The mythological understanding tells us about human values, about what matters to us, about how we make sense of our existence. As you drift toward sleep tonight, let your mind wander among those distant lights. Imagine the journey of the photons, 440 years of traveling through empty space at the ultimate speed limit of the universe. Imagine the stars themselves, born from collapsing clouds of gas and dust, igniting their nuclear fires, burning bright and hot and young. Imagine their future, the slow dispersal of the cluster as gravitational interactions pull the sibling stars apart, sending them on separate journeys through the galaxy. Imagine the ancient peoples who watched these same stars, who created the first stories about them, who passed those stories down through hundreds or thousands of generations. Imagine the Babylonian astronomers tracking the stars' movements, the Greek sailors timing their voyages by celestial risings and settings, the Aboriginal elders teaching songlines to young people, the Aztec priests watching the midnight sky for signs that the cosmos would continue, the Maori communities celebrating the new year when Matariki appeared at dawn. Imagine all the people throughout history who have looked up and found wonder, beauty, guidance, meaning in those points of light. Imagine yourself as part of that vast chain of observers, sharing an experience with all of humanity across all of time. You are not alone, you are not separate. You are part of something ancient and ongoing, a conversation between earth and sky that has been happening for as long as humans have existed and will continue as long as we survive. The stars will outlast us. Long after our individual lives have ended, long after our civilizations have crumbled into dust, long after our species has either transcended into something new or vanished entirely, the Pleiades will still be there, shining in the darkness, marking the seasons. Following their slow dance through the galaxy, they were there before we existed, they will be there after we are gone. And yet, for this brief moment in cosmic time, we are here together, humans and stars, consciousness and light, stories and physics, all interconnected in the grand web of existence. Let this knowledge bring you peace. Let it connect you to the vastness while also grounding you in your particular moment, your specific place on this earth, under this sky. You are small, yes, but you are also part of something infinite. You are temporary, yes, but you are connected to something eternal. You are one person among billions, yes, but you carry within you the accumulated wisdom and wonder of countless generations who looked up at the same stars and asked the same questions. Who are we? Where do we come from? What does it all mean? The Pleiades do not answer these questions with words, but they answer them nonetheless. Their answer is their presence, their light, their beauty, their constancy, their slow movement through time and space. Their answer is the stories humans have told about them, the meanings we have made, the knowledge we have encoded, the wonder we have felt. Their answer is in the simple act of looking up, of seeing, of allowing yourself to be connected to something vast and ancient and magnificent. As sleep approaches, carry the stars with you into your dreams. Let them guide you through the night as they have guided travelers and seekers for millennia. Let them remind you that you are part of a story much larger than your individual life, a story that began in the depths of time and will continue into the far future. Let them connect you to all who have come before and all who will come after. Let them fill you with wonder at the beauty and mystery of existence. The 7 sisters shine on, patient and eternal, waiting for you each time you look up. They have been there every night of your life, even when clouds obscured them or city lights washed them out. They have watched over humanity's entire history, From our earliest ancestors taking their first uncertain steps to our current moment of technological capability and existential uncertainty. They will watch over whatever comes next. In their light, we find connection to the cosmos and to each other. In their stories, we find wisdom encoded and preserved across generations. In their presence, we find comfort and wonder. The Pleiades, the Seven Sisters, Matariki, the Criticas, Subaru, Mul, Tianquistli, the Kunkarankalpa, by whatever name we know them, they remind us that we are not alone, not separate, not meaningless. We are part of a vast cosmic dance that has been unfolding for billions of years and will continue for billions more. Rest now, knowing that the stars keep watch. Sleep peacefully under their ancient light, and when you wake, they will be there still, constant companions in the turning of days and nights, the wheeling of seasons, the passage of years. The Pleiades shine on, and so do we, brief flickers of consciousness in the cosmic night, looking up in wonder, telling stories, making meaning, connecting earth to sky, past to present, self to cosmos. The Seven Sisters have been singing their song of light across the darkness for 100 million years. For a tiny fraction of that time, humans have been here to see and wonder and weave stories around that light. Our moment is brief, but it is brilliant. We are here now, under these stars, part of this ancient story. That is enough, that is everything. Let the starlight carry you gently into sleep, into dreams where past and present merge, where earth and sky join, where all the stories told under the stars blend into one great narrative of existence, of consciousness, of wonder. The Pleiades watch over you, as they have watched over all who came before, as they will watch over all who come after. Rest in the knowledge that you are made of star stuff, that you are the universe experiencing itself, that you are connected to everything that has ever been and everything that ever will be. Rest in the beauty of those seven sisters scattered across the night, their light reaching across space and time to touch you in this moment. The stars are singing, and you are part of their song. Sleep now and dream of light traveling through darkness, of stories passed down through generations, of the eternal dance of earth and sky. The Pleiades shine on and their light blesses you. Good night, star traveler. Good night, story keeper. Good night, wonder-filled observer of the cosmic dance. The Seven Sisters keep watch through the night, and their light will guide you through your dreams until dawn returns and the cycle begins again.